The Baltimore Ravens 2025 season ends at the hands of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it's the same old Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and now the #1 sports podcast network. Appreciate everybody for being here on this season-ending edition of Locked On Ravens and making us a part of your day. Your first listen of the day here is we're just past midnight, and we are discussing a choke job, the same old Ravens, and a disappointing end to an abysmal season. So again, thanks for being here, especially after a loss like that. It means a lot to me. We're going to have a lot to talk about in terms of offseason talk, but I mean, we just have to, we're going to talk about it all. The game, the season, the offseason. We're going to dive into it here on Locked On Ravens. So hit the like and subscribe button in video form and follow along and subscribe in audio form as well. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. Before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Man, well, it was a terrible season. Like this was one of the most frustrating seasons, I think, ever in this franchise's history, and it comes to a very fitting end. But I mean, look, these are the worst types of years, like the worst, because they pull you back in. And you think, oh, look at this. They're finally turning a corner and they're finally doing stuff. Even over the course of this game, I'm like, they're finally doing stuff right. And then look what happens. You have an all-time choke job. Your defense can't stop anything without Kyle Hamilton. Can we get some, those MVP ballots still open? Because I think Kyle Hamilton should get a couple of MVP votes based off how terrible that Ravens defense looked. It's just, it's bad. And again, there's fourth quarter lead blown after fourth quarter lead blown, and you can't get the job done yet. A game-winning field goal, Tyler Loop misses it, and look, all the conversation, he's a rookie and all this, I understand it, but it doesn't matter if you're a rookie or a 15-year vet. That's a kick you have to make to go to the postseason. It's a tough environment, but it's the big leagues, and unfortunately, you miss a kick like that. Doesn't matter how many years you've played or, how many moments you've had. Loop had a chance to cement his legacy already. And obviously it's not all on Tyler, right? Like he misses the kick, but there was a lot before that moment that happened. And a lot this season before that moment that happened where the Ravens shouldn't have even been in this position in the first place. So yes, Tyler had the missed kick. I understand it. It's not good. They'll need to learn from it and kind of stew with it all off season. But there are so many other things that just kind of sum it up. And honestly, for the way the season went, a very fitting end. A very fitting end. So look, over the course of this game, we see a lot of things pop up that continue to just plague this team over and over and over again. And starting with the offense, where, again, Lamar was awesome in the fourth quarter. Zay Flowers was awesome in the fourth quarter. I'm sick that Isaiah Likely play is going to get just completely washed in history now, and, no one's going to remember it. But the offense after that first drive did nothing for 2 quarters. Barely anything. And that's something that has plagued them forever. They could never capture the momentum back. And that, to me, signals both poor execution and poor coaching. It's both. The Ravens offense got really predictable in the middle of this game, where the Steelers started to say, hey, we're going to load this box up and you're not going to be able to run the ball on us. Derrick Henry's final numbers were not terrible. I mean, he averaged 6.3 yards a carry. I mean, he had that long 41-yard run to start off the game here, but that it got too predictable in the middle of the game. And the Ravens couldn't really pass the ball a lot early in this one. Lamar had a couple of weird plays, and, Lamar wasn't perfect either. But again, he showed up in the big moment, but then you see a couple of weird plays from him. His interception, I'm not going to put that on. The ball got batted around and intercepted. I'm not putting that on Lamar. That 2nd and 7 throw to D-Hop where he told D-Hop to move and D-Hop was standing still at the first down marker, that's on Lamar. That was a bad play by Lamar. But, you saw, again, like the offensive line had good moments and bad moments in this game. They got beat badly on some plays, and Lamar was able to escape some stuff and make some stuff happen off of that. But it's just frustrating to see the same things happen, and why we are going to have to go out there this offseason and have long conversations here. Because, again, if you don't know how Locked On Ravens works or you're new to the show, we're a year-round show. So we're going to be talking about this. We're 5 days a week throughout the entire year. So we're going to be talking a lot about what the Ravens have to do in the offseason. But there are so many things that from the first game to the final game just continued to be a consistent for this Ravens team this season. And it's infuriating. And I get, like, Kyle Hamilton, huge part of your defense. But Kyle Hamilton is not, the reason this team continued to miss tackles over and over and over again this season. Kyle Hamilton is not the reason why the Ravens are playing so soft on third down on like every single possession, and why this team just couldn't play up and press guys. Like, there are all of those things that were consistent issues throughout the entire course of the season. It's not Kyle Hamilton's fault this team didn't have a pass rush the entire year. Like, I get it. Kyle Hamilton's a huge part of your defense. You lose Nate Wiggins. Obviously, Nnamdi goes down. That's a really big blow for you. But there are too many consistent mistakes, both from an execution perspective and from a coaching perspective. Again, we'll have the John Harbaugh conversation coming up, so you're going to want to stay tuned for that one, because we are really going to go and have that. But at the end of the day, like, how many times are you going to go back to this well? How many times are we going to sit here and have a conversation after a do or die Ravens game, after a horrible loss? Because let me tell you something. This was the postseason. It was week 18. Postseason hasn't technically started yet. What's the playoffs? It's win or go home. Tyler Linderbaum said it. This was a playoff game. And in those moments, the Ravens continue to shrink. And it's like you play really well for a certain part of the game, and then you just disappear for other parts of it. And by the way, this is to a Steelers team that had no DK Metcalf. And Aaron Rodgers somehow threw for almost 300 yards in this game. A lot of that comes from missed tackles, which, again, this was a terrible tackling team all season. They could not tackle the entire year. And it takes me back to like 2021 and 2022. You can't have that. You have guys on like 3rd and 8 stopped for a 1-yard gain, and Kenneth Gainwell or Jalen Warren or whoever breaks out of it and runs for 10. Like, those 3rd down conversions, we saw it against Green Bay. And Derrick Henry luckily was running so incredibly well that, it didn't matter. But hey, that's something you really got to focus on and fix, because you can't have 3rd and 18s get converted. You can't have 3rd and 9s get converted. But I'll tell you what, I've never felt so helpless watching a Baltimore Ravens defense than I did this season. I've never felt so helpless, especially in this game. And you shouldn't feel so helpless after one player goes out. And I get it. Like, Hamilton is, in my opinion, he's one of the most valuable players on the defensive side of the ball in this game, if not the most valuable player, because of how many positions he plays. But again, there are so many other things that go beyond Kyle Hamilton. And you see the offense for Pittsburgh, they just stayed on the field. I mean, there was a time the broadcast was showing that Pittsburgh held the ball for like 12 and a half minutes compared to Baltimore's like 4.5 or something. Time of possession ended 34-11 for Pittsburgh, 25-49 for Baltimore. And it's so frustrating to have to come on every single season, every single last game for this team and talk about the same stuff over and over again. It'd be different if it was something different. And I guess it's different iterations of the same thing. But, the famous quote, the definition of insanity, or, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, how many times? Because let me tell you this. This season, the Ravens were, by a lot of people, I was one of these people, picked to win the Super Bowl. And this team misses the postseason. And I get it. Injuries happen. Lamar was banged up and, you missed Nnamdi. But we can say this too. The Ravens over the past 3 seasons have been very lucky in terms of season-ending injuries. Not guys being banged up, because they've had their fair share of that, but season-ending injuries where you're not getting guys back. And Lamar, I think, you can kind of put him in like he really wasn't himself this season category. Like, your MVP level Lamar Jackson, he was done for the season, right? But he was still out there making Lamar Jackson plays at times, but it was evident that, he was off for the entire year. And again, if, he's healthy enough to play, he's on the field, he has to play in those moments, and there's context to everything there, but there's just so much that's rooted that is wrong with this team. And it is from the player execution and some of these guys on the roster that need to go, to some of the coaches that need to go, to some of the decisions by Eric DeCosta this offseason. Like, it's a laundry list, and we'll get to it coming up, but it's so much for a team that has had 3 incredible chances to win a Super Bowl with Lamar Jackson, 2019, 2023, and 2024, and don't even have a Super Bowl appearance to show for it. In the first game against the Steelers, the Ravens held them to 17 carries for 34 yards. Pittsburgh gashed Baltimore on the ground in this game. And it wasn't like this overly dominant performance, but it was timely runs. Because Pittsburgh couldn't get anything going early, but then Hamilton goes out and your defense starts to tire down. And, it just felt like Jaylen Warren, 6-yard run, Jaylen Warren, 8-yard run, that tush-push play. The Ravens defense is falling all over each other. It was an embarrassing season. It was an embarrassing season. And, while the Ravens technically protected the football, again, that Lamar interception was such a fluke. Lamar has the most Looney Tunes interceptions I've ever seen, bouncing off a guy's hands and into the arms of others. But still, one turnover in this game, and you're able, it's so frustrating too, because the Steelers were able to take advantage of Baltimore's mistakes, but that's the key to this game for me. It was mistakes. And I there's so much more I have to say about it. So coming up, we'll get into the second part of the show, and we'll talk about that, because the mistakes in this game, while there weren't a ton of turnovers or whatnot, there's one key area here where this has been a consistent issue for Baltimore, and it needs to change, and they need to figure out a way to do it. So stay tuned. Plenty coming up on Locked On Ravens. Nobody knows your money goals better than you. Robinhood puts you in control of your money with tools that work as hard as you do. Lock in on every opening, beating your PR, beating it again. Channel that drive into your money. Robinhood puts you in control of your money. Trade stocks and ETFs, options, futures, and crypto all on one platform. You can now build and execute your own trades from a desktop with Robinhood Legends advanced tools, or take advantage of the new Robinhood strategies with a tailored portfolio managed by a team of experts. You expect more from yourself, expect more from your money. Get started today at Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Again, that's Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Your money, your move. Moving along, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here, instantly reacting to the Ravens season coming to a close in the same old Baltimore Ravens fashion. Appreciate you for being here again after a loss. And I know it's really tough, we have each other here in this Locked On Ravens community, venting out all of the emotions. Be sure you hit the like and subscribe button in video form, and follow along and subscribe in audio form. We got 5 days a week of Ravens coverage and content. Again, that does not end, even though the season is over. We'll be back here tomorrow talking more Ravens, talking John Harbaugh, Lamar Jackson, entire loop in this game. But we're going to have a lot to talk about this offseason. We're year-round here on the show, and we have a lot of other stuff as well. And we also have the squad show coming up after this also. Now, I need to talk about these penalties. 9 penalties for 78 yards in this game. And let me tell you, not all of them are penalties. That opening play, Zay Flowers, not a penalty. It was a ridiculous call. But those mistakes are stuff because you had holding calls. You had illegal formation. You had special teams penalties. Pittsburgh had 545, but this Ravens team just continues over and over and over again to just be undisciplined. It's just an undisciplined team. And while the penalties, weren't as egregious this season compared to what they have been in last year's, well, look, if they show up in the biggest moments like this, what is that? It's a trend. That has been a trend. And you have a year come to an end like this, and I see the stat, and I actually didn't know this, so thank you. Henry only had 5 carries in the second half. That's another problem for me. It felt like they abandoned it. And if that is, I don't have that exact number, and so thank you for putting that in there. But you just, where is the pass rush? Where is the offense? And where's the offensive line? All of these things that continue to happen over and over and over again. I can't. I have no words. Like genuinely, because how many times? All right, if you've been listening to me for a while on Locked On Ravens, or if this is your first time listening or whatnot, you've probably already heard me use the word undisciplined a lot. But if you've been an everydayer here with me on the show, how many times have we come on here after a big Ravens loss, whether it be postseason, regular season, and how many times have we said, "Man, Ravens looked so undisciplined today. Look at these penalties, or look at these missed execution." And penalties happen, yeah, because the players, don't get this and all this, and a mistake happens there, or they get beat or whatnot. But it also is on the coaching, like penalties and sloppiness and miscommunications and all that. To me, it all does come back to coaching. And that, to me, that's the most frustrating part of it all. Because when you have your team prepared to play, yeah, penalties will still happen. Like, I get that. Penalties will still be there. But you need to be able to consistently put yourself in good situations, not hurt yourself. I mean, that's what they're doing. They're continuing to hurt themselves. So, just to round out the conversation about this game in particular, because we know they lost, we know their season is over. They start 1-5, which was just too much to overcome, and a couple of really brutal losses down the stretch. Zay Flowers, 4 for 138 and 2 touchdowns, took advantage of coverage bust. Isaiah Likely makes that huge catch again. Tez Walker, 2 for 46. I want to see more Tez next year. I really, really, really want to see more Tez next year. Mark Andrews, a pretty big no-show again, which, makes that Isaiah Likely catch, who, again, he didn't show a lot either until that last catch, but that was a clutch play. Ricard, 1 for 8. It's a really weird passing game for them. And then Trenton Simpson had 9 tackles. Trenton had a couple of really big plays. Alohi Gilman continued to miss tackles. Awuzie slipped on a touchdown. Marlon Humphrey. Okay. Marlon Humphrey. It's time. It's time. Marlon needs to get on out of here. And Marlon's had a great Ravens career. Like, I think that the recency stuff with Marlon has overshadowed what Marlon has done for Baltimore. Marlon's been an elite corner for most of his career, and I don't want that to get overshadowed. But this was a really bad year for him, and it started to really unravel for him this season. And the Ravens, it's not like a ton of money, but I think it's around $7-ish million because they restructured that deal a little bit. So I think Marlon's deal is, let's see the dead money on this real quick. So he has next season a $26 million cap hit with $18 million in dead cap. So yeah, it'd be about $7-8 million of savings for them. It's just, he came up with a big play or two tonight, but there were 3 times in 2 possessions where he just got juked out of his shoes. And, he's lost some of that quickness. And I just, it's tough to, especially with that cap hit, to justify him sticking on the team. And, we're gonna have to see what, their big plan is there. But I mean, look, at the end of the day, something needs to happen there. I would honestly move on from Marlon and bring back Awuzie. Right? I would honestly move on from Marlon and bring back Awuzie. And injuries certainly play a part for a lot of these guys, Marlon included, but, you're going to have to make some big changes somewhere. And, if we're being honest, Lamar's contract is going to have to be addressed. You can't play him on a $70 million plus cap hit. Now, obviously, Lamar should stay. I'm not, that is my opinion on that situation. But you need to free up a lot of cap space. And this is the offseason for me. I'm kind of bleeding into the final segment a little bit. But, this is the offseason for me where, this is put up or shut up time for Eric DeCosta. It truly is. Because I think that some of the philosophies that he is employing right now are very outdated. The comp pick thing needs to be scrapped. Go throw a 4-year, $60 million deal at the second best guard on the market this offseason. I don't care if you lose a 3rd-round comp pick. I just don't. I get you need to have guys on rookie deals when you have a big quarterback contract, but, you had 11 draft picks this season. I said during the draft, 11 draft picks are not going to make this roster. And lo and behold, 11 draft picks not make the roster. They're wasting assets. And I need to see improvement there. You need to figure it out. Genuinely. Like, this roster, for as good as some positions are and were, there's too many times where the Ravens have cheaped out at the guard position. The Ravens don't have a true pass rusher. They need to really go after a guy like Max Crosby hard this offseason or something along those lines. And Lamar Jackson will turn, I think his birthday is tomorrow or this week. He's going to be 29. His birthday is January 7th. So he's not 34, but he's not 24 either. And I think you need to have conversations about both coordinators. Honestly, I'm okay if they bring Monken back. I think Zach Orr, there needs to be a serious conversation about. But, obviously the big person that, we have yet to talk about is John Harbaugh. Now, if you've listened to me on this show, you know my stance. You know my stance on John Harbaugh. I think he should be, I think it's it. I think he should be gone. I thought he should have been gone at the end of last season. But there's a lot of indication across national media that that's not going to be the case and that Harbaugh will be safe. And I don't know if that comes in formal announcement or, maybe a report happens or something. But truly, how many times are you going to go back to this well? Genuinely. You've moved through multiple coordinators. You've had multiple iterations of this roster. It's all stuff I've said before on this show. But over and over again, in the biggest moments, this team collapses. 3 playoff wins in 10 seasons. It's not going to cut it. I think a lot of teams will do a lot of things, will do anything to have John Harbaugh be their coach and have that regular season success. And I'm not saying Harbaugh's a bad coach, but it's just time for the Ravens to get a new voice. I think it is. And I'll be on that hill. I will genuinely be on that hill. And, there seems to be some level of disconnect. I know a lot of the players are defending John Harbaugh, which is what you should do. I mean, you're not going to trash your coach to the media, right? But, like for these guys who have been on this roster for a while, like Ronnie Stanley, obviously Lamar, and, some of these other guys, like what's the situation here? Like, I genuinely don't know, because to me, this signals a lot of what Steve Bisciotti is thinking, right? A lot of what Steve Bisciotti is thinking. Is he complacent? Is he complacent with just making the playoffs or being, a 10-win, 9-win, 8-win team, whatever it may be, having some regular season success? This was a team that was supposed to make the Super Bowl. When John Harbaugh was very adamant on the lounge earlier in the season, Super Bowl or bust. I mean, that's crazy talk and all this kind of stuff. Well, he didn't even make the playoffs. He didn't even make the playoffs. Like, that to me proves that I just don't think the mindset is there. I just genuinely do not think the mindset is there. And I think there needs to be a new leader. Now, you need to get that leader right. You don't need to go and just hire anybody and all of a sudden, yeah, that's the guy. No, you need it'd be a thorough search. But at what point do you say, okay, it's time? Like, what is the straw? What is the straw that breaks the camel's back in this situation? So it's tough. And I see, Harbs did say this wasn't Super Bowl or bust, went into the year with quitter mentality. You can't have that mentality. You need to live or die with every snap and every game, every season. And it just felt like John Harbaugh had no sense of urgency this year. And I think over the course of the year, you could tell that he felt his seat getting hot and he understood that his seat was getting hot. But I don't know. It's just like this eerie confidence that he has that, hey, no, I'm not going to get fired. So we heard the reports this morning from Adam Schefter and everybody that, Harbaugh's leaning more safe than out, but there would be conversations. Now there need to be conversations. Absolutely need to be conversations. And to be completely honest, like, this team would have gotten smoked by Houston next week. Would have gotten smoked. I mean, they didn't deserve to make the playoffs anyway. But when you continue to let the hope back in. You start 1-5. Oh man, the season's over. Oh no, now you beat Chicago and now you rack off some wins and they're back. And then all of a sudden, nope, now they're losing all these important games. And then all of a sudden, no, look, they're back. And then, they lose another game. And look, now they're back. And then they it's like, just end the season. And again, I would rather go 0-17 than go 8-9 because at least you get the top pick. At least you get to rebuild with that. Like, what does this do? And the Ravens, I think, are going to have around the 14th pick. So, not like, it's still a pretty good pick for them. But at the end of the day, like this complacency stuff of just kind of being like, yeah, we'll kind of be good, but we're not going to be like Super Bowl good. No, the goal is to win a Super Bowl. That should be the goal. When that's not your mentality, when that is not your Super Bowl, yeah, I just, I don't know. I said now I'm talking crazy. Maybe a little crazy takes will come out on this because I'm feeling all the emotions. So I might have a couple of those, but even still, you need to be able to respond to this with the biggest amount of changes this team has had in the Lamar Jackson era. I think that is where my stance is. So coming up on the final part of the show, we'll talk about what those changes could be. We'll continue talking about those. We'll continue to recap the season and put a bow on, again, a pretty terrible year. So stay tuned. Plenty coming up on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel's making them even better. Every Friday night, before the games tip off, FanDuel's giving fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame and limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern to become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Open the FanDuel app during Happy Hour. It always brings something new. Boost bonuses and surprises. It's easy to check the weekly special before tip-off and make a move before the window closes. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Continuing on, Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you after Abysmal, disappointing year ends. Ravens will not be making the postseason. And man, it is tough, especially after that team just continues over and over and over again to get your hopes up. And no, we're not done yet. Well, now they are done. But we're not done here on Locked On Ravens. Again, we are year round here. So even in the offseason, we will have Ravens content for you, talking about where this team needs to improve, talk about players they need to sign and everything along those lines, moves they need to make. So be sure you like and subscribe, video form and audio form as well. Oh, man, it's tough. And yeah, actually, I remember that Marlon play. Sheesh. Yeah, Marlon got burnt by Adam Thielen. And yeah, just we had the Marlon conversation already. But looking at this offseason, because again, I think it's time for transitioning into that. We talk about John Harbaugh, and again, I think he should be fired, but it is what it is. It needs to happen, but I'm not expecting anything. You just need to be able to make the changes you need, and that starts with investing in the trenches. Now, looking at Baltimore, we'll look at Ravens free agents, 2026. The Ravens have a lot of decisions to make. You got guys like Tyler Linderbaum, who I think should be a priority for them. What are they going to do about Isaiah Likely and Charlie Kolar? I think that they probably bring back Kolar on that Likely walk. It'll hurt to let Likely walk, but I don't think you can keep all three. I think Kolar was the best tight end this season. So that's going to be interesting. You got to re-sign Jordan Stout. That's going to be huge. Chidobe Awuzie is another guy I would love to have back. You got to make a decision on Patrick Ricard here, or Darius is going to be a free agent. Kyle Van Noy. I probably wouldn't expect them to bring Van Noy back. I'd expect them to try to get Draymond Jones back. I think they might let Gilman walk. I wasn't very impressed with Gilman, to be honest. He had a great play on that fourth down or the end of half stop, but I wasn't super impressed with Gilman this year. After, he filled a role that helped Kyle Hamilton out, right? But I think you can get another guy in. Keaton's a restricted free agent, so you can match anything that he gets. I think you're fine there. Daniel Falele needs to walk. You should not bring back Daniel Falele, but you're going to have to rebuild probably at least 40%. If Linderbaum walks at 60% of your offensive line, you're going to have to get that elite pass rusher in the building. You need more wide receiver depth. You might consider a trade for Rashad Bateman this offseason, who ends his year with pretty abysmal stats. Mark Andrews, you re-signed him, so he's going to be a part of your team. But yeah, I mean, it's all around brutal right now because there is so much that this team has to do this offseason. And while, you have it in place with Lamar, assuming he stays, and he needs to, you have it in place with your quarterback, but you're going to have to make some tough decisions here on some guys. And this, to me, is a horrible way to end this thing. But at the same time, maybe it does spark change. Maybe them losing does spark that change. And them waking up finally and saying, all right, hey, whoa. Like, our team, dealt with some guys getting banged up over the course of the year. Lamar obviously being the main guy. But hold on, wait. A lot of our roster was healthy for a lot of the year, in terms of season-ending stuff. So where is this happening? Well, your offensive line was terrible for the entire year outside of like 2.5 weeks. Well, you couldn't get pass rush the entire year. Your season-ending sack leader, unless the stats update, was Travis Jones with 4. I mean, okay. So, like, you have to address that. And the trenches, to me, it's where it all starts. It all starts up front. It just feels like whenever we say, okay, the Ravens need a guard, they need somebody in the trenches, here's 10 safeties and 10 corners. Like, I get it. Secondary is important, but you need to spend your draft capital wisely. And I think for Baltimore, if you can go out there in this draft, again, you have that 14th pick. Obviously, 14th pick has done pretty well for him with Kyle Hamilton recently. But if you go out there, you can get somebody with that pick. It's a 10-year starter on the O-line or an elite pass rusher. That is exactly what you need to do. I don't want to see a wide receiver. I don't want to see a safety or a corner or a linebacker or whatever. Go upgrade those trenches. Go upgrade those trenches. That's what I need. That's what I need this team to do. There's a lot of disappointment in the building right now. Like, I get it, and understandably so, right? But I mean, you need to have a lot of tough conversations this offseason. And, DeAndre Hopkins, he said it, 3 yards wide right from playing postseason football. And, again, with Loop, like, that's a tough way. And, he struggled at times this season. I thought he was pretty money for the majority of the year. The kickoffs are something he's going to have to get down. That was a struggle in multiple big moments this game. Out of bounds kickoff or a touchback that puts the Steelers starting at their own 40, at their own 35. Like, you need to figure that out. But again, like, all these guys are pros, rookies. I mean, we didn't let up on Mike Green when he was having a bad start, or Malachi, or any of those guys, right? Like, it's criticism all the same. And, I have a lot of faith in Tyler. I like Tyler, but, tonight it was tough, and that moment is going to be in Ravens history forever. And Loop's going to have to live with that forever. And this Ravens team is going to have to live with the fact that for a year where they were considered wide Super Bowl favorites, they're not even making the playoffs. And to me, that, like, the Ravens were the most disappointing team in the league this season. And by the way, this AFC is wide open. Like, I genuinely thought, like, Baltimore probably would have gotten smacked by Houston next week. Like, it just probably would have happened. But there was genuinely a shot that they could have made a run, just because if they had a good game in this one, right, where you're playing your best football, Denver and New England are unproven, but at the end of the day, we just saw the weaknesses were too much to overcome. And that would have been the case in the playoffs. And this game to me showed that. So it's another elimination scenario where, Baltimore just can't get the job done in super disappointing fashion. And my question does remain, how many times are you going to go back to that well? And a good point from Curtis saying Detroit fans disappointing as well. But yeah, Ravens most disappointing. I mean, the Ravens, most embarrassing team in the league this season. And if this doesn't spark change, I genuinely don't know what will. Like, I genuinely don't. Because I'll say this to round it out. Coaches have been fired for less. A lot less. than what John Harbaugh has done with this Ravens team since taking over with Lamar Jackson. Remember, Lamar saved his job in 2018. He was out of there. He was going to get traded or fired or whatever. And then Lamar saves his job and no Super Bowls to show for it. So it's a weird year, a tough year, but I genuinely appreciate everybody for being here on Locked On Ravens. And, it was a great year here on the show, right? It was a tough year for Baltimore, but it was an amazing year for this show. And we're not done. I mean, again, we're year round here. So all off season long, we're going to have content through the dead period of the off season, through the free agency, the draft, rookie minicamp. I mean, we're going to lead all up to it. And then again, we'll be back with Ravens football before we know it, but hopefully with a lot of change on the horizon. So thanks so much for all the support. And we're going to be back here literally in a couple minutes because we're going to do the squad show with myself, Sam Njoku, and former receiver Kadri Ismail. But we're also going to do our Monday show, 6 a.m. Eastern time. We're going to have our weekly, we're 5 days a week, and that is year round. So like and subscribe in video form, follow along and subscribe in audio form. Ravens season ends in disappointing and horrendous fashion. But stay tuned for everything we have in store here for you on Locked On Ravens, and I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.